Good morning, everybody. It is Sunday morning here for an early bird edition of the Operator of the Week podcast. Today, I have a pretty special guest. I think a lot of people know him, but a couple of announcements first. Um, as always, if you want to support the podcast, there's links in the description below. It just helps with the cost of the streaming services and stuff. And then as well, that hopefully we'll be having a couple of videos coming out soon for POTA, just general. And tonight's could be the Ham Radio Campground. If you haven't been there, come join it. It's a lot of fun with myself, Mike, CU3HY, and James, the Ham Radio Adventure Guy, KE8PZN. So sorry about the little hiatus I went on for the podcast. I had to do some stuff the week of spring break. So, yeah. Anyways, without any further ado, let me go ahead and bring my guest in. A lot of you are going to know him by his YouTube channel, which is Ham Radio DX. And a lot of you are going to also know him by his call sign, which he has a couple. I know his Australian one, which is VK7HH. And a lot of you might know him as Hayden. So, hello, Hayden. How are you?
Hello, Patrick. I hope a lot of people know me as Hayden. I don't want to be known as anything else.
Well, I think a lot of people might also just know you as Ham Radio DX because it's your YouTube channel.
Yeah, that is true. And my other United States call sign is Kilo Delta 9 Sierra Bravo.
Yeah, I know it's KD9 something, but I just couldn't remember. So it's KD9 single sideband.
That's right. That's right. It's a when I got that call sign from the FCC, I thought, no, I'm going to keep that because I like that.
Yeah. So, oh, that was actually issued.
That was an issued call sign. That's not a vanity call sign. Yeah.
Talk about rolling the dice on that one.
Wow. Good luck with the draw.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's probably some other SSB call signs out there too, but different call areas. So I'm sure I'm not the only one.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, my first call sign was KG9IVF. I was like, yeah, I don't really want in vitro fertilization to be my suffix.
No, probably not. Here in Australia, we've had a long history of being able to choose your own call signs, if they're available, of course. So my very first call sign was VK7HH, which is the first three letters of my name. And then I upgraded to a higher what is now known as the advanced license class, which is your extra equivalent. And I changed my call sign to VK7HA. So I dropped the Y. And then the call sign that I wanted, which is my initials, ended up coming up a few years later after that, after the previous operator unfortunately become a silent key, and I was able to obtain that call sign. So that's how I got those. So I've had three Australian call signs in my time.
Cool. So kind of piggybacking off that, why don't you go ahead and tell me and the rest of the folks how you got into amateur radio? I know you have a pretty long story, actually.
Yeah, and I just want to say hello to Don as well, who is in the live chat. He seems to follow me everywhere. So hello to Don. He's a new he is a new amateur radio operator, so it's good to
I think
have
his
him on.
Son or daughter, I don't remember. One of them lives like a few miles away from me, actually. So
okay, I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
So my start come from when I was fairly young age, probably about 11 or 12. I started to develop an interest in electronics and computers and all that sort of stuff. So this is going back in sort of the early 2000s, and I started experimenting a little bit with. We have UHF CB, which is a CB band, but it's in the UHF spectrum, and started playing with them. Did a few things like built some kits from an electronics store, so built a crystal set, built some LED strobing lights. I'm trying to think what else we built. I think we built a ding dong doorbell as well, and sort of progressed from these kits to discovering amateur radio. And I discovered it because a couple of my relatives, both of my uncles at the time, were hams, and I didn't realize it. And one day I was at my uncle's place, and he had this. I think he had a Kenwood TS 120V sitting on his office desk, and it was switched on 20 meters. And I said to him, "Oh, what's that?" And he put the headphones on my head, and he said, "Spin the dial around and see who you can hear." And I remember hearing stations from the UK, and I think it was a couple of other European stations as well. And I sort of got interested and hooked, and then my other uncle started to send me some study guides, and I studied for my test and got my license. So that was in 2004 at age 13.
Wow. So
All right.
Yeah. So you've been doing this for 18 years, huh?
18 years this year.
Wow. That's pretty good, considering you're basically the same age I am. So that's more than half your life.
Yeah, I've been doing it a while, and in that entire time I've been active, I haven't had any break. I haven't had any significant breaks. I've had times where I haven't been active on certain bands because I haven't had an antenna up, or the residence that I've been hasn't allowed large antennas. But usually, then I would still be able to operate from my vehicle, portable. Operating through repeaters and stuff like that. So I've been active that whole time. So, yeah, amateur radio has been a pretty big part of my life, and it's also led to a few career opportunities as well. And it's something that I have no regrets in getting.
So, when you were young, were your parents like pretty supportive of you in the hobby?
Yeah, they were. So my my two uncles were both on my father's side, and and my father's uncle in England was also a ham as well. So it kind of went two generations of uncles. So they sort of all knew all about it, and they were very supportive. My dad actually even built me a shack when I was 15, 16, I think, and that was external to the house. And built a little. I think it was like a 3x3 shack or something like that. 3x3 meters. So what's that in feet? 10 foot by 10 foot.
Yeah, about 10 by 10. Yeah.
Yeah, and I put my tower next to it. I had a 30-foot tower and had a couple of antennas, and I'd go out there and tinker at night when it was freezing cold outside, and used to build stuff and then come in when it was time for bed and go to school the next day, and then come home and back out to the shack. So spend a lot of time out there.
Yeah, that's awesome, because I didn't really have that kind of I wouldn't say support growing up, but I was in a family of like 4 kids, so we were always competing for the money.
Yeah, I think because it was an interest that sort of kept me out of trouble. That also helped a lot. And I remember my first radio being an FT757, a Yaesu FT757 GX radio, which is an HF radio. And that radio, I think I bought secondhand for about $500, which back in 2004 for a 13, 14-year-old kid is a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
And so I managed to. I had saved some money, but I'm pretty sure I got lent some money as well. So that was good for them to do that. And I've got one other brother as well, and they supported him with his interests as well. So it was really good, and made a lot of friends as well along the way.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And So when did you start doing the YouTube channel?
So, if you actually look up the date of my YouTube channel, it's a little bit misleading because it says that I started it in 2016, which was when I created the channel. It had no content on it until probably early 2017. And I think my first video is a solar inverter data logger walkthrough and setting it up, which is a absolutely terrible video. Don't go and watch it. It's got a lot of thumbs downs because it was so terrible. But I started to get interested in the ham radio. In the doing the ham radio videos because I was doing at the time I started to do experimenting with microwaves. So bands above 1 gigahertz, and I was starting to build bits and pieces here and there, and I would forget what I would do, and I wanted to document what I was doing, but typing it all out in an article or I used to do them I used to do updates on a blog page, which I've still got. You can go to my website and you'll see some of the blog posts that I've done years ago. So that's what I would do. But then I kind of thought, well, it's a lot easier if I use video. And my one of my grandfathers on my mum's side is also got an audio visual background, and so as I was a kid, he sort of showed me editing and filmmaking and all that sort of thing. So that was an interest of mine as well. So I decided to do those videos on just my microwave stuff, and I think there was a couple of videos on repeaters as well because I did that as well. That was another interest of mine. And then I just started to branch out a little bit more, and I did a couple of videos on, like, I think I did the Yaesu FT 991A, setting that up for WSJT, and then that took off and went really well. And I thought, oh, maybe I can start to do some tutorial videos. So I started to do those, and then gradually it just started to flow on more and more. And there was an awful lot of knowledge in radio clubs around, especially around Australia, in our own club, but also around Australia, which was sort of kept in-house. So I kind of liked to share what, these presentations and this knowledge with other people. So that's kind of how it started. And now it's grown into, I think, 17,500 subscribers or something like that, which is just ridiculous,
Yeah.
I didn't expect anything like that. So I'm just glad that people enjoy the videos that I do. So, and as long as I keep educating, inspiring, or promoting amateur radio, and people enjoy it, then I'll keep doing it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it's all about, especially for me and types of people I try to talk to. Because there's a lot of people out there that are just walking encyclopedias. Like, there's one guy I met recently. He built his own sub-millimeter transmitters, and there's a video up of it, and I was doing it at the Support Your Parts week, and it just blew my mind. I was like, "What?" Basically, talking with the lasers almost.
I think that's actually a very good point that you raised, Patrick. Is that when I look back at where I started, I had absolutely no clue whatsoever about anything, and I've still got no idea. I'm still learning heaps of stuff to do with radios and all sorts. So when you start, it can seem quite daunting, and there's a lot to take in and to learn. And you're not expected to jump straight into like the sub-millimeter wave transmitters and build those. But you can take your time to learn about that stuff. If that's something that you want to learn about and something that you want to do, then you've got plenty of time to learn about it and do that. I remember seeing a repeater controller board, a layout and schematic in an old article when I was only licensed, I think, 2 or 3 years. And one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to build a UHF 70 centimeter repeater to cover my local area where I lived because it had no coverage. And I studied that article, and then I studied how the circuit worked, how to build it, what it did, all the functions. And now that's something that eventually I learnt to know the back of my hand. It was really easy to to follow now, but back then it was very hard to understand. So, and that took me a good a year and a half to learn that. So, I think for those who are new and just sort of are it's very daunting, the hobby, but
Oh yeah,
yeah, with a bit of time you can learn all this stuff.
yeah. No, that's exactly the thing is with this hobby is that it's not necessarily hard to get into, but I would say it is a little bit difficult to like be proficient at certain things. Like there really is no true plug and play to this hobby because you can always do something better, and it's figuring out how to do it better.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of facets. Like a lot of people are doing the outdoor, a lot of the outdoor stuff now. So like parks and soda and things. And unfortunately for me, I've been stretched for time, but that's something that I really enjoy doing because I like doing the outdoors, especially the soda stuff, because I love going for walks to the top of mountains and stuff. And I wish I had done it years ago because I've done so many mountaintop trips. I could have activated so many mountains and had so many points.
Yeah, I'm
But
with you.
but you know, eventually you get to learn these things, and it was the same with microwaves. I wanted to delve into, because my main interest is VHF and above, so I wanted to delve into that. I wanted to know how the signal goes from A to B and what's in between that makes it be able to go further than what it normally would, so further than line of sight, all this sort of
Hmm.
stuff, propagation. And it's just, it's a hobby of 1,000 hobbies. You learn over
Yep.
time, and yeah, it's going to keep going for another 30, 40 years, I'm sure. And there's plenty more to learn and to have fun with.
Yeah, so you've been doing a lot on your channel. I noticed with like especially like 6 meter and
Hmm.
above.
Hmm.
What would you say to use like the most interesting you're working on in the UHF VHF spectrum?
Well, funny, 6 meters never used to really be my favorite band. I'll admit that 6 meters definitely is my favorite band now. And because when I started playing on 10 meters, which is very, very close to six.
Yeah.
It's almost the same. It's not quite the same, but it's a little bit better. You don't have to have as much patience on 10 meters. But yeah, eventually then I moved on to six. And one of the things that I've been doing and working on is trying to work the United States on 6 meters. I haven't done it on FT8. I haven't done it on any modes at all. But I want to do it on FT8, and then I want to do it on single sideband. So that's one thing that I am really focusing on for 6 meters. Every summer that comes around, I'm usually on 6 or 2 meters and 70 centimeters, trying to work across to New Zealand from here, because New Zealand's about in miles, about 1,800 miles
Yeah.
away. So I'm always interested in working New Zealand, but then also on the higher bands. So we've got in our local radio club here probably about 20 or so enthusiasts who are interested in the high bands.
Hmm.
So at the moment we're playing with 3.4 gigahertz. So we're getting a few stations on that band, and we've got about 20 stations on 1.2 gigahertz, so 1296. And we've got a couple who are on 2.4. So we're just sort of playing around with these bands, and just we use them in contests. We bounce signals off of mountaintops and buildings and all that sort of stuff to just experiment and have a bit of a play around. Build new bits of equipment, build antennas, all that sort of cool stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because like here in the states, I feel like UHF and VHF has kind of died off a little bit. I think 6 meters is kind of making a resurgence in the U.S., but um, as far as like in the gigahertz range, like there's just not much going on, and it's actually kind of hard to find material like about operating in that
Mm.
part of the band, and especially nowadays too with because of all like the 5G and Wi-Fi's and all those devices, a lot of that spectrum starting to be eaten up. So,
Hmm.
um, you know, I'm hoping that I'll be able to do some significant toying around there before the government decides, oh, we're gonna go and give this to somebody else.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that has happened here as well. We've had significant portions of spectrum taken off of us and given to the, other interests, so commercial interests and defence force and all that sort of thing. And sometimes with these bans, we get caught, I suppose, in a bit of a rut where it's, well, there's no point in me buying equipment or building equipment for it because we're just going to lose it anyway. But I think we've a couple of us have just started the motto of, well, we need to use it or lose it,
Yeah,
because have a go with it now while it's still available. And I mean, most of the equipment that I've built for those bands has been purchased. You can't buy radios off the shelf. You have to put things together. You have to buy transverters. You have to buy sequencer kits and put all these things together. And half the time is not at the end of it being making the contact. It's actually the building process. And then once you've built everything and you get it on the air and you make the contact, then you get quite a bit of satisfaction that, hey, that worked. That worked. Or maybe it didn't work and I need to fix this, and you fiddle with it a little bit more and make it a little bit better and improve it. And most of the gear from that's like I've had the transverters have come from Bulgaria, the power amplifiers have come from the United States, the preamp has come from Israel. So I've had to purchase all these bits of gear from all over the place, and the sequencer come from Australia. So putting it all together and making it all work is almost as rewarding as just the contact at the end of it.
yeah. Well, that's one thing I guess you have to consider being in your part of the world is like pretty much everything is imported. So
Mm.
it's kind of based on availability too for you. It's not like for me, for instance, I could probably find it on eBay and it's probably other side of the country at most. But
Mm.
yeah,
Amazon's a big one in the United States, I've noticed, because we've obviously got Amazon here too, but we don't have anywhere near the range that the United States has gotten. But it's getting better. We can order stuff now, and it gets shipped from the US out to here, and it seems to be getting better. There's still some things that aren't available, but
mm,
yeah, most of the stuff that I've found, at least for microwaves, have been off of eBay, and they've come from from those areas that I talked about. So
yeah, yeah. So kind of speaking of that, so what's the ham radio presence like in Australia? Do you have like a pretty big and diverse group and active, or what's it like operating over there?
So, Australia's got a population of about 25 million, and we have around about 13,500 licensed hams. So we've got more individual licensed call signs, but some people hold two call signs. Some people
Yeah,
have. Here we have repeater call signs. So I know that when you run repeaters over there, you run them usually under an operator's call sign. Well, here we have individual call signs. So once you strip all of that away, it's around about 13,500 hams, which is pretty low for a population of
yeah,
25
that's not a
million.
lot.
No, so and it'd just be absolutely guessing at how many of those are active. Like it could be anywhere from 80% are active to 20% are active. It's so hard to figure that
Yeah,
out. But I think that since COVID, we've had quite a lot getting back into the hobby. Those that might have either lapsed or maybe they've even discovered it for the first time. I know that a lot have discovered it for the first time, but they've sort of gotten a little bit more interested in it. So I think we might see over the next few years a little bit of an increase in the amount of operators that get licensed. Certainly those that are active as well. So yeah, I mean, it's good if you ever talk to a VK on the air, they'll be happy to have a nice chat with you, and it's not like sort of you're 5'9". Thank you for the contact. See you later. They'll have a chat for you for quite a
Yeah.
while, and very very friendly. We're a pretty friendly bunch down here. So, but yeah, that's the amateur scene in Australia. So,
Yeah, 13,500 is not a lot at all, considering like just the size of the country too. Um,
mm.
yeah, I would
We've
think
got
there would actually be utility for it too in like some of the more barren parts of the country, I guess you could call it. Um,
mm. So in the United States, I my own personal view is that because you've had quite a resurgence in amateur radio licenses, and I think in particular the technician license, which kind of leads me to believe that a lot of that is due to things like the prepper movement
yep.
over there, which we don't really have in Australia. I'm sure that we do have people in that who are interested in that, but we don't have. It's not as big. One thing that we do have is we do have a lot of travelers and a lot of vacationers and grey nomads and people that travel the outback. And I think for them, they would find that having an amateur radio license would be an invaluable tool for their
Yeah.
traveling, especially because it's such great distances. Because you think that because in Australia, once you travel away from the coast,
There's
it's
like
a
not
long
much.
way.
Yeah.
There isn't much, and it is a long way between towns and between cities. So, because if for those that aren't aware, you can place Australia on top of the United States, and it's almost the same size, if not a little bit bigger. So, that's one thing I think that we need to target. There's a couple of other things that we can do to increase the interest here, but yeah, I'm hopeful that we can do that. I'd like to see something like 20,000 hams I don't know, by the 2030. Who knows?
Yeah. You pretty much hit it on the nail with like the technician here. Sometimes too, it's like a college thing for us because there's college programs that will give you like I guess some sort of credits or whatever if you get your technician license. Um, I don't think anyone actually requires it, but I know that's a thing. So a lot of people have a license, but like they don't even use it because like oh I just got it for the college credit, you know.
Hmm.
So, um, but yeah, the prepper movement definitely um, added some numbers to it. Those folks aren't too active on HF. You find most of
Mm-hmm.
them kind of just stay on UHF. Although you kind of tell them like, hey man, if something really bad really did happen, that little bell thing's not going to do very much for you. You're going to
Bit
find out
limited
pretty
in its
quick.
range. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, that's kind of interesting because like that's what I was thinking in my head. It's like you have the outback there in Australia, and I have to imagine like there's no cell phone signal, right? And most of it.
Yeah, not outside of major towns and
Yeah.
cities. So yeah,
So I mean, kind of have to wonder, like, well, how would you talk to each other? And I think there you go, amateur radio, perfect choice.
we do have an HF network which you can get a separate license for, which is it's like a traveler's system. That's probably the main one that they do use for those kind of things. But by the time they sort of spend the money on that, and there's a lot more variety that they can get out of amateur radio. But anyway, that's there. So
Huh? That's
yeah,
interesting. I've never heard of that actually. The Don says emergency HF radio subscription.
yeah,
So
yeah.
so how does that work?
So that is the I'm pretty sure it's the Codan network, Codan radios. It's a land mobile system. So they pay for a license that covers it's like it's a VK, I think it's a VKT call sign. And basically, yeah, it allows them on a specific set of HF frequencies, which is I think they're channelized frequencies. I think
Like almost like CB kind of.
almost, yeah. I think it covers like six. I'm pretty sure one frequency is on like 6 megahertz, and then there's another one that's lower down. So it's not. It's you don't get an awful lot of frequencies, but the manufacturers of radios they make specific radios for those particular frequencies and for those range of frequencies, and then they sell them, as traveler outback radios. So yeah, the name, and even Don says in the chat, the name escapes me at the moment. I'm pretty sure that the radio company is Codan that make the radios. But for me, I can't remember what it might even be. Travelers Net or Travelers Emergency Comms Network or something like that.
Huh.
I'd have to look it up.
So yeah, it sounds like you guys have a lot of kind of public radio services over there for people, like compared to here at least, where like we just kind of only have FRS, GMRS, which is kind of within the same band space, but and then we have CB and MERS. That's we have Marine VHF obviously too, but it sounds like you guys have a lot more like publicly available radio services.
I don't think we have. I don't think we do. We're probably a bit on par. So the main ones that we have is UHF-CB, which is 470 megahertz. So that's restricted to 5 watts. So you're not allowed to run any more than 5 watts. You can run whatever antenna you want. So that's good. But yeah, there's UHF-CB, which is 80 channels, and that's up in the 470 megahertz range. So limited to line of sight to 10, 20 miles or something if you've got a decent antenna. We've also got 27 megahertz CB, of course. So we've got the similar channels, I think, to what you've got over there. We don't have that's AM and sideband. We don't have FM on 27 megs.
Yeah, they just added that for us.
Yeah. And then we've got obviously so they're unlicensed services. You don't require a license for that. You can just go and buy a radio straight off the shelf and plug in an antenna and away you go. As for licensed services, we have the ones that I mentioned before, which is the Outback HF network, whatever that's called. And then you can also go and purchase a what they call LAN mobile license if you want as well, which gives you sort of like a private set of frequencies in the VHF or UHF spectrum. So there's a small range of frequencies that you can go and buy a license, but the license for that is quite high. It's not cheap, and usually that's limited to usually what they use on those particular services are things like events and private companies and all that sort of thing. They rent that space out to them. So, but you can purchase a license for that, and you could use it as your own family chat channel if you really wanted to. But it's a fairly expensive way of doing it.
Huh. That's interesting. No, it's just interesting to learn like the radio services in different countries and how it works. Because like Japan, it's like the whole own thing, and then we have like our own thing going on here, and it's just interesting to see like how everybody's just a little bit different than each other. But anyways, I wanted to go on and talk about POTA because you recently just did your first activation.
I did, and it's a very, very long time coming. I've been wanting to do one for a little while. So what I did was I ended up we sort of had a camping trip come up, which was last weekend. And I quickly put together the KM4ACK NFED halfway, which is just sitting over my right shoulder on the bench back there. And I decided, I'll take that with me, and strung it up in the tree and made some contacts. And I took the IC705, which is also sitting up there too. And just thought, I thought I only need 10 contacts to activate the park, and I'll get that with VK because we do have quite a big parks interest. We have quite a lot of people who are interested in parks in Australia. A majority of them do WWFF or VKFF, Worldwide Flora and Fauna parks.
Mm-hmm.
They don't sort of do parks on the air as the number one, but you can still do parks. You can still do those programs, and then you can submit logs to each program. So you can submit a log to WWFF and also to parks on the air, either one, and get points and awards for them. So obviously, my audience is a majority United States audience, so I sort of activated the POTA side of things and ended up making about 31 contacts. So, I was stoked about that and ended up working DX to Europe, to Belgium, Germany, Finland, and I think Poland as well. So,
Oh yeah,
which
if you POTA, the DX will come. That's what I
yeah,
like to say.
yeah. It just rolled in, and now I'm starting to, because my girlfriend's saying to me, "Oh, we should go away for a weekend." So I'm like, "Okay." And then the first thing I do is to check if there's a park
Where
nearby.
is the park? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the number one thing to do now.
Yeah. So it sounds like you had a ton of fun out there. And
Yeah. It was good fun, but now what I've done is I'm going to take my IC 7300 with me because I just recently got a LiPo 4 battery, and I've got a charger coming as well. But now I've got the battery, I can run the 7300 and get a little bit more power. So because the 705 was a little bit low.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like with 10 watts you can get out. I don't know. Were you running at 5 watts?
Yeah, I was running on the internal battery on the 705.
So you're running like 5 watts. So it sounds like you're getting out all right on 5 watts, which is pretty good. It's all part about the antenna too. I mean, it's a good antenna. Can't go wrong.
Yeah. And I mean, like, the difference between 5 watts and 100 watts is quite substantial because if you listen in the video, there was a lot of stations giving me 4x4 and 4x1, and they couldn't really hear me that well. And I had to call a couple of times to tell them what their signal report is. And they were like, 5.9 or 5.5 or whatever. And 5 watts to 100 watts is what, 13 dB extra. So it's quite a lot of, if I can run 100 watts as opposed to 5 watts, I'm going to be able to be heard a lot better. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, definitely. Using more power definitely helps with getting more DX, I find. But like, as far as like doing operating here in stateside, I kind of find with like 20 watts, I get out across most of the country fine. But if I really want to do DX, I have to bump up the power just a little bit.
Yeah, well, I had that same thought as well because initially I was only going to be activating to work the VKs. And once I put the spot up, I worked several VKs and they were really, really strong. And it just so happened that day on 20 meters was really, really good. The waterfall was just full. And it was, I had the same thought. And as you say, 20 watts to work across the country is more than enough.
Yeah. And so how many parks do you have there in, your island, I guess I would say?
That's a good question. I don't really know. But so I'm on the island of Tasmania, which is it's a state of Australia. So the Australian mainland is to our north, and we're on an island to the south. So on the island we have quite a lot of parks. So POTA just recently they updated the amount of parks that we have that are eligible. I think that was about 4 or 5 months ago. So we got a heap more added. So the amount of opportunities to activate is now increased. I I'll see if I can share my screen because then I can actually show you how many parks there are because I don't know off the top of my head how many there
I
are.
pulled up the POTO website. It says 3128 in Australia. I don't know specifically.
Oh, total. Yep.
Yeah, yep. And where in your part of Australia.
Yep. So I just shared the screen. So that's that's the island I'm on. I'm located down here in the south at the bottom of the screen, but there's quite a few yellow dots there. So there's a lot of parks around to activate. We've got a lot of national parks, and a lot of national parks that you can activate. There's a lot of reserves as well, wildlife reserves, state reserves, all that sort of thing. So a lot of those are incorporated on here. And zooming in on this is my city. Like there's about probably about 15 there, I suppose, in that shot there. So and there's a lot. Yeah. And there's a lot here, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 7 in this area just down here, that's about an hour's drive from where I live. So, a lot of opportunities. So hopefully I can get out and activate some of these parks. And the one I activated on the weekend is down here, and this is on a separate island off of our main island.
So is that an iota as well?
That is an iota. Nice. So Tasmania is an iota, and then that's a separate iota as well. And then there's another island here which I went to about 18 months ago, and I want to revisit this one. This one's you take a ferry across, and you can't drive on the island, but the entire island is a national park. So the entire island you can operate POTA from. And there's also a soda summit on this island too. So I want to activate that soda summit at some point.
Yeah, you could do like a dual activation there.
Yeah,
if you wanted, yeah.
Yep,
that'd be pretty cool.
There are a lot of soda summits that are in parks. So plenty of opportunity to do the dual activation.
Yeah, that's pretty cool because. Yeah, I know like a little bit about Tasmania because as a kid I used to watch the heck out of the crocodile hunter. No, crocodile hunter, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say Tasmania should be known because of the Looney Tunes with the Tasmanian
Devil. Yeah.
Except the Tasmanian Devil does not look anything like the cartoon. So
no, I know that. Again because of crocodile hunter, man. Steve Irwin.
Steve Irwin was from Queensland, which is up in the north of Australia. But he used to do a lot of stuff down here as well. Yeah,
he's kind of like the international ambassador for Australia for a while there. Because everyone knew who he was.
And if you go back to the 80s. Late 70s and 80s, then it's probably Crocodile Dundee.
Dundee,
we just can't get away from it.
Yeah. So you have that kind of stereotype going on. It's like you all just wrestle alligators and fight off wildlife all the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the moment, probably our most famous guy is Thor. I mean, we've got we've got the God of Thunder, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, doing all
Chris
right.
Hemsworth.
Yeah, but so do you ever go to the I guess you'd call it the mainland, maybe?
Yep.
Yeah. Do you
we call it
venture out there for whatever?
Yeah, so we call it the mainland. Obviously with COVID, I haven't travelled to the mainland in over 3 years now. But due a trip over there soon. It's only about an hour flight from here, or an hour and a half flight to the nearest city, which is Melbourne.
So you got to fly there.
Yeah. You can also take a ferry as well, which is overnight, so you can drive. So if you need to take your vehicle over, but that takes overnight. But the main there is actually this weekend just gone was probably the largest hamfest in Australia, held in Sydney over the weekend. So not sure how that went. I need to check up how they went up there. But yeah, there's quite a lot of hamfests on the mainland. So
Yeah.
we have one hamfest which is in November this year, but I'm hoping that I can get over to the mainland for a couple of hamfests probably by the end of the year, and we'll see how we go. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping one day I get to make a little de-expedition down under because my dad's actually going to be living there for a couple of years. Not in
Hmm.
Tasmania. I think he's going like Perth area,
Yep.
but he's doing like he's basically, I guess your government has this program where they'll like uh, basically fly you over to get your doctorate, and that's what he's doing. And they're like
Okay.
paying,
Yep.
yeah, they're like paying for him to get his housing and everything. You know,
Yep.
as long as he does it in Australia, so it's actually kind of cool. So
Yeah, it's a pretty good country to live in. Like we've got quite a lot going on down here, and you know it's a pretty comfortable country to live in. Perth's about 4 hour flight from here, so it's a fair bit longer
it's
to
like
get
cross
there.
country for the U.S. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's Western Australia. So we're on
Yep.
the east coast, so that's on the far west coast, so it's right across the other side of the country. So it'd be like almost traveling. Well, it's probably even further. It's probably even longer than 4 hours because I can't remember if we do direct flights anymore, but it's probably 4.5, 5 hours. So it's almost the equivalent of flying from LA to New York. So
Yep.
um,
Pretty much the same.
yeah, so but nice city, nice place to visit.
I was about
And
to visit there once, but that was when I was in the Navy, and then certain president ran his mouth and said, "No, we're just gonna go poke North Korea instead." So
uh,
yeah,
and you could have visited Perth. Oh well, next
yeah,
time.
I was pretty bummed. I was like,
Yeah,
"Oh my
yeah,
gosh, man, this is like probably one of my few opportunities in my life to actually go to Australia." This guy
yeah, yeah.
ruined it.
If you and I, yeah, I mean the when you're flying from lots, because generally the best flight path to do it is from Los Angeles to Sydney or Los Angeles to Melbourne. There is a Dallas to Sydney, which I think is one of the longest flights in the world time wise. I think it's like 23 hours or something ridiculous. It's really long. Um, but Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, all of those cities on the east coast are quite nice places to visit. Um,
Yeah,
and yeah, it's quite a lot. It's like places like you go up to Brisbane in Queensland, and that's like Florida because it's like this. You know, it's warm all the time. It's great weather,
are the people
beaches,
like
sunny
Florida
beaches.
too?
Sorry.
Do you have like Florida people there too?
I
You know,
don't think
guys
so.
walking in the
They're pretty
store
good.
with crocodiles in their arm and getting beer.
No, that's a little bit fit. So for crocodiles for crocodiles, you have to go a little bit further north in Queensland. But yeah, it's sunny beaches. Pretty much Australia's just known for sunny beaches
Yeah,
and nice weather and all that sort of thing. So yeah.
yeah. No, I know. Like Australia, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is supposed to have some of the best beaches in the world. So, or at least for
Mm.
surfing. Um,
Yeah, it's a lot of surfing.
but yeah, no, that's awesome. A pretty popular way on the East Coast to get to Australia actually is going through the Middle East. It's like you go to
Mm.
Qatar and then take a plane from Qatar to Perth or
Mm.
Melbourne.
From the United States, that's the very long way around. If you're going
Yeah,
to
it's usually
Europe,
cheap though. That's why people do it.
yeah, if you're going to Europe, that's definitely the way that you would go. So generally, flying from Melbourne to Dubai or Singapore, all those places, and then they hop off there, usually in one stop, and then they jump back on a plane again, and then go a bit further to Europe, and then obviously it's just if you're in the UK or something, it's just a jump over the Atlantic Ocean, and you're in the east coast there. So, but yeah, that is the unfortunate bit is we are so far away from everyone,
Yeah,
right
super
down here.
far. Yep.
So it's not just two things. It's distance for travel, but it's also for DX as well. So
Mhm.
and I'm even worse because I'm pretty much like the furthest away
Yeah.
down south, so it's even harder to get DX down here. But yeah, Solar Cycle 25 on the way up is certainly making it a lot easier. So
Yeah, and I was gonna kind of like ask about that because here in the U.S., um, and especially like even just from a language perspective, there's a lot of like English speakers. It's pretty easy to kind of like talk to people if you want to talk to people. Do you find it a bit of a challenge there? Like, because in your part of the world, there's like hundreds of languages.
yeah. I mean, well, English is the number one language in Australia. A pretty multicultural country, of course.
Yeah,
But I find, especially working European stations, sometimes can be a little bit challenging because of the language barrier. It is, and especially too because of the Australian accent is actually quite a unique one.
yeah,
So it's sometimes some words don't sound as they should when we speak them. But yeah, working European stations, sometimes you just need to just repeat phonetics, repeat, signal strengths just a few times just to try and get the message across. And most of the time, it's pretty good. But yeah, we do struggle a little bit sometimes, but yeah, it's all good fun.
yeah. Yeah, like I kind of get the same thing. So like if I'm out there doing POTA, and like I'll know the second it's a foreign call sign because just like off the accent. Because like I can hear like all these American, even Canadian accents, which are kind of the same, but unless they're from Quebec, Daniel knows what I'm talking about. Quebec just have that very French. It's like, oh yeah, they're from Quebec. But yeah, like the minute I hear a DX from like overseas, I'm like, DX station, come back.
Yeah.
So you could just tell like just from the way they're saying the letters and the words. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, we've got here in Australia, we've got dialects depending on which state you're usually in. So I sound a lot different than someone up in the north part of the country, and then we might sound different to the western part of the country. So yeah, it varies quite a lot. So I guess as you said with Canada, sometimes you got the different dialects, and like even in the United States, you've got all sorts of different dialects. But yeah, it's like I did the same thing. I'll be tuning around maybe on 20 meters, and I'll hear a station, and I'll be like, I know that station is in or close to New York, or is maybe in the south, in the deep south somewhere. And yeah, you pick up on those things when you listen, and you just before you
Yeah.
even get the call sign.
Yeah, there is some pretty distinct dialects here, especially like, me being on the East Coast, I get New York City a lot. Like the minute those guys come, it's like, yeah, you just know they're somewhere around New York City. It's just, you can just tell by a thick New York accent.
Just talking in, I can't do it offhand. Talking in New York,
Yeah.
New Jersey and New York.
Like whiskey pool.
Yeah.
And yeah, they say their words all funny. Yeah, it's pretty fun, man.
I can't do the only US accent I can do. It just ends up being Southern. So
I think that's the easiest one to do.
Yeah. Kilo 5 Whiskey Hotel.
Well, you could probably pull off a surfer accent too.
Maybe
Surfers, you just say dude every other word.
But aren't most of the surfers would be on the west coast in California though, wouldn't they?
There's actually kind of like a micro surfer culture on the East Coast too. Like pretty much like along the coastline from I'd say
Miami would have a few, I'd imagine.
Well, no, like from like southern New Jersey to I guess like northern South Carolina. Like there's a kind of like this whole little like pocket where it's like there's very much like a surfer vibe to it. It's pretty interesting actually. Like it's almost its own little culture in America that usually gets forgotten about. like the coastal folks, and some of them even have their own special accent. Like there's these folks in North Carolina where they basically sound British. Like if you look it up, it's actually kind of fascinating because like these people have just been so isolated on the island they live on. They developed their own accent, and it never changed from like when the immigrants came over hundreds of years ago. So the accent kind of dying out now because everything's so connected. But it's actually really interesting because like there's little pockets in the U.S. where you have like really unique accents.
Well, a lot of that come from Australia too, because a lot of our residents, I suppose, came from the UK. So
Prison colony.
the prison colony, the First Fleet, and sort of French European, British, mostly British. And my family immigrated out here in the 1960s, late 1960s, early 70s. So a lot of, and you do find that a lot. So you'll find one generation will they'll have all of the British accents, and then the next generation will be Australian, but it's like, their son or their daughter because they've grown up here. Yeah, that's quite interesting when you see that. So.
Yeah. Well, so this has been pretty awesome. I've learned a lot, and if people here aren't subscribed to your channel, I don't know why they're not. They need to go do that. I put the link in the description. Do you have any other projects coming up or coming out you want to talk about?
Well, thank you for having me on anyway, Patrick. It's been really good to be able to have a nice chat, and it is quite late here. It's just about to tick over 11 p.m. and I appreciate you waking up fairly early over there. I think it's just almost 9 a.m. I suppose over there on a Sunday. On a Sunday, yeah, on a Sunday morning, you don't really want to be waking up at 8 a.m. to do a live stream. So
I've looked up for worse. Trust me.
So no, thank you for doing that. What I've got coming up, I guess, in the next few weeks, I've got just finished editing a video to do with a PODA activation, which is going to be happening by some VK stations who are going to the US. They're going in about a week's time, and they're going to be activating a whole bunch of parks. So I'm just about to release that video. We've got so our ARRL equivalent, which is the WIA, they are doing a AGM and a presentation this weekend. So I'm going to there to support that, and there'll be some presentations mainly on Antarctica. It's an Antarctic theme. So amateur radio's got a big history in Antarctica.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting. And then towards the end of the month, we've got the YouTubers Hamfest, which is coming up. So we're going to be hanging out with some vendors from ICOM Yaesu. We'll have the ARRL on. I've got a couple of vendors from overseas in Serbia. So they're going to be showing off their antennas as well. So, yeah, we're going to have fun with that. It's a busy May coming up for me. But, yeah, thank you again for having me on.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. So you're going to do a lot more PODA content now that you're addicted to it?
Definitely if I go away. So I've actually got, so there's a national park which has got there's some log cabins that you can go and stay up.
Nice.
And it's quite nice in the winter, especially when it snows. So I think we're planning on going there. Obviously, it's coming into winter here in the southern hemisphere. So going to enjoy activating that, and a few other parks. So it should be good fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you mentioned the YouTubers weekend. I think that weekend I'm going to be hanging out with Ham Radio Adventure Guy, and we're going to try to activate every park in Washington, D.C. in a single day. So
that's a good challenge.
Yeah, well, it's a tough challenge because that's Memorial Day weekend, too. So there's going to be a ton of people in D.C. Because that's where like all the war memorials and stuff are, too, for us. Like every major conflict. And there's also Arlington National Cemetery where, most of our, I guess you call them heroes, are buried. Yeah, so a lot of cool stuff coming up. As I said before, go check out his channel. And I will go ahead and cut off the stream here in an hour. Say 7-3 to everybody.
7-3. Thank you very much.